Hey everybody. What's up, Insta world? Hello Insta friends, it's Karen Hutton and I'm doing my Friday live, Insta lives for photographers. I figured that's a fair way to start. And while everybody's coming on in here, look at all these. I know some of these people. I know some of you guys. Hi guys. Hi Deb. Anyway, just loving watching everybody come in here. And today we're going to talk about purpose. I'm going to talk about purpose. Purpose in your photography, purpose in art, purpose in life. It's kind of all the same, you know, it's kind of all related. Hey, hi. Oh my God, this is great. Hey, and as you come in, tell me where you're coming in from. Where are you all hailing from? I love knowing that. The Maldives? Are you kidding? Okay, when do you want me there? What's for dinner? Where am I staying? Oh my God, the Maldives. That is so awesome. What a beautiful place. Yep, Massachusetts is in the house. Coming in hot from Minnesota. Is your pup there? Do we have puppies in the house? Hey from Dubai. Seafood. Ooh, as in like seafood and eat it? It's my favorite stupid joke. Oh my God. Yeah, so all you guys, it's another warm sunny day in Scotland. 2 thumbs up to one of my bucket list locations. England, awesome. California is in the house. So yeah, for those of you who are just popping in here, you're just say hey and where you're coming from. Oh, the borders are open. When did they open? The Maldives borders are open as of today. The sunny side of life. Yes, we got a little sunny side going out here. It's been really hot. Norway. Hi Norway. See, Norway bucket list. All my bucket list places are coming in here. So this is just giving me purpose for doing this, connecting with all my favorite places that I can't quite go yet. I'm really looking forward to it. Anyway, yeah, so we're talking purpose. Why are we talking purpose for photographers? Well, first of all, let me say that these Friday Insta Lives I'm doing as a series. And I'm going to do a true confession right now. The reason I'm calling it a series is because it is. But I could stop there and just, you know, be all professional, all profesh. But the truth of the matter is I have commitment anxieties when I say I'm just going to do it. Because then I feel like I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. And then I feel trapped. Which is so stupid. Because I'll end up doing it the same amount either way. But in my mind, in my tiny little mind, it's easier if I say it's a series. Because, you know, it's a series. And then I feel like I'm up to something, and then the purpose of it all changes in my mind. See how that works? Mm-hmm. It all comes back to purpose. So, okay. I'm just making sure everything's running here. Everything looks good. And, yeah. All right, so this topic of purpose. I want to talk about what it is. I want to talk about why it matters. And I want to talk to you photographers. And you know what? Some of you out there are art collectors. You love to have art and photography and other kinds of art around you. And you wonder, you know, like when you look at art, and I do too, because I have art around me. It isn't all mine. It's other people's too. And I'm always really interested in their purpose and how it comes through their work. So for those of you who photograph, it's like that elusive thing, right? You know, trying to figure out what that is. But it does tie into artistic voice. It ties into signature work. It ties into like the whole quantum field and how that works through the light particles and embeds itself in the pixels of your work. And then it's seen and felt and smelt by, you know, people who love your work. And of course, when you then take that work and put it into print, whatever kind of printing you like to do, or if you paint, or if you do ceramics, or if you do sculpture, or do whatever, it literally, it not only embeds itself on the pixels, it embeds itself in, your finished product. And it's that thing that if you convey it correctly, it's that thing that makes people stop and go, oh my God, that's amazing work. Those are beautiful images. So, purpose is, I'm just checking to see where, okay, I see new people coming in. I'm going to stop for a second to say, where are y'all coming from? We've got a global group. So basically, if we did a big cocktail party, we'd grab our drinks and we'd go to the Maldives, we'd go to Dubai, we'd go to Norway, we'd definitely go to Scotland. I don't know what order, but we'd go to those places. We'd go to California, we'd go to Minnesota, we'd go to Massachusetts, and we could go to Nevada if you want to. It's really hot here right now. We'd go to Texas. Hello, Texas. So I just imagine, how you do that, like gather and then you kind of let go as a group, all these places. So when we're all done with this, worldwide, whatever we got going on here, we'll develop some beaming technology. We'll do these lives, but we'll do them live. We'll beam to each other's location. Okay, that's my purpose. Another one of them. I have many. This is how it works in my mind. Fort Worth, Texas. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. So, all right. So let's say you love photography. I'm going to do a lot of for instancing here. Let's say you, I'd rather reach y'all in Maine. Let's do Maine. I'm for that too. Okay, moving on. So what is purpose? All right, so you can have purpose in a lot of ways. You can, like for instance, some people do, they have projects. Their purpose is to like have a real specific, photograph indigenous tribes in various parts of the country, or they have they photograph portraits, they photograph dogs, they photograph, and it can be your job, it can be your passion, it can be your art, it can be your expression, it can be all these things. And ideally, you have a purpose that's strong enough that you spend enough time kind of steeping in that it, stir and apply to all the above. That's the ideal. So when you all think about it, I'm just curious, those of you who are bold and brave enough to pop it in the comments, when you think of purpose, and some of you I know, so you've heard me talk in all these kind of woo ways, these woo ways. What do you feel is your underlying purpose? So like mine has to do, like while you're thinking about it and putting it in the comments, because I just throw a word in there or a thought. I'm just curious to kind of know where your heads are at. So for me, I'm kind of one of these people that it has to have a purpose to everything. And it's always got to be deep and meaningful. And I'm sorry, but that's just how I am. So mine has to do with a vision that I had when I was young. And it was that, okay, so like when I was young, I had visions, I talked to God, I had angels, and with all that, the veil was very thin to the other dimensions, and that seemed really normal to me. So I had a vision. One of my most powerful visions that stuck with me all these years was standing on a stage. I know a lot of you have heard this already, or some of you have anyway, but I see some new names, so just to kind of have a starting place here. Me standing on a stage, like I wasn't yet an actor or singer or any kind of performer. I was just a kid. I was like 8 or 9 years old. And so I'm seeing purposes come in here, and I'm going to just sort of sprinkle them in for people who listen later, to spread love and beauty, sharing the beauty of creation. Thank you very much. Because you see, purpose can be like that. It can be like an underlying, deeper meaning. And in that sense, you can apply it to everything. Or it may be more specific and more genre oriented, but it probably ties back to a core piece about you. So in my vision, I'm on the stage, I am talking to this audience, full of people. this huge column of light is coming down, huge, like bigger than me, comes down through my head, through my body, out my, heart and gut, and out my, out my hands, washes out over this audience, and they're transformed. They're healed. They're whatever they need happens as a result of this light. It's not me personally, like little me. It's the connection to the greater light, standing pillar of light style. And so that vision when I was 8 or 9, I was like, oh, that's so awesome. That's really cool. And that's what I want to do, right? And it took me, well, really, it's been a lifetime journey to figure out how you do that on this dense earthly plane. And so consequently, I tried. I was a singer, an actor, performer, dancer, figure skater. I trained horses. I showed horses, performed in, all different kinds of things. And I was always a photographer because I was raised that way. My whole family were photographers even before I was born. And so I found myself in photography for real. And it's funny because it wasn't until 5 or 10 years ago, it dawned on me, wait a minute, I create with time and light. Oh my goodness, maybe I found the thing. Because none of the other ones, they had parts, they had elements, of this whole bigger picture, but it wasn't the whole dealio. So the purpose was always about light, and just like Texas over here said, to spread love and beauty, sharing the beauty of creation. But furthermore, in my vision, I had this there was this transformative exchange, this exchange of energy, this healing quality that would radiate, and it always involved physical creation of prints, and we always had prints when I was young anyway, so that all made sense. So that became this purpose. So that became part of the deal. So then when you stand behind a camera with whatever your purpose is, and anybody who feels like piping up and throwing in what they feel like their purpose is, or what they're thinking about, or maybe you're just trying to figure out what it is. I'm just curious to know kind of where this all sits with y'all. The thing about a purpose is the reason it's a gift and a huge superpower to have your purpose is it determines it determines everything that happens next, from your gear to what you shoot to how you process your images, everything. Yeah, there we go. Documenting the unspoken and unconditional connection between dogs and their humans. Hello? That's beautiful. And I knew about that before that was even born. And I just love that. I love that you can say that in one perfect sentence. Because, when your purpose is clear, I always say in the arts and print side of my world, it's like I create oxygen for your walls. That's my shorthand way of saying the whole light thing. Oxygen for your walls. Because if you imagine art shifting the energy in the room, giving you a little healing, giving you a hug, giving you oxygen in your heart and your soul. So as artists, and we photographers are artists, it's kind of up to us. It's really all we've got, I think is my point. You have a camera. You got some technique. That's great. You got some good technique. You can take good pictures, let's say. Capture the beauty of nature in macro. Yes. More on macro in future get-togethers. Enjoyment in seeing the joy you bring others. Yes. It can be really simple. In fact, sometimes the simpler the better. My concepts seem to take a lot of words, but the feeling itself is really very simple. It's that thing. I need a bunch of words to explain what that thing is. I forgot to include teacher in my description. Yeah, apparently part of my purpose is that too. Thank you for reminding me. Not that I forget, but so yeah, part of my purpose is also teaching. It just kind of came as a package deal, creating the art and teaching about teaching others how to do that more for themselves. And that is an art unto itself as well, because we need more people, more artists on the planet creating this way, bringing this gift to others, whether it's through teaching, whether it's through creating your art, whether it's just through being, right? Because it's a radiant quality, and it's a quantum quality. I'm starting to talk more about it. I was always, I don't know why I was hesitant, but when we talk quantum, what we're talking about is outside the realm of, it's this, it's that. We start talking about, some of you who are in here have been on my photography retreats, and we, in all parts of the world, and we do this whole kind of like inner work right at the beginning to kind of get in there to that place where we connect with our artistic voice, purpose, whatever you want to call it, but that special something that becomes like a quantum particle stream, particle field that literally goes through the camera, embeds itself on the pixels, and if it's good, if it's strong enough, it comes out in print, comes out everywhere. And the thing is, you can't contain it. It's not just something you do in your photography, it's also something that just starts to happen. You can't compartmentalize light. And that is what we're talking about, is bringing your own light. And in our case, as photographers, working with light, interpreting it. If you shoot nature, whether it's animals, whether it's, whatever, out in nature, wildlife, macro, landscape, what have you, purpose will help you define how to do that. So, it's funny because I'm putting together a presentation for Fujifilm for an event called PhotoCon. It's happening in Hawaii. It's part virtual and part in person. But the one I'm putting together is about storytelling. And of course, I can't stop telling the same story, just with different words, whether it's, purpose, artistic voice, storytelling, because to me, it all comes down to the same thing. So with a purpose, you go out and you can choose a centralized character, or like for me, I like to shoot the light, but I love relationships in nature. So people always wonder, how do you shoot stories in landscape photography? And I'm like, well, it's relationships, and macros the same way. And of course, if you're shooting dogs, it's, there's your character, but it's the relationship of the main character with the other, whether that's another dog, or whether it's like macro, maybe you're shooting a flower, maybe it's the flower is beautiful, and you can make it a study of the patterns and the beauty and the light. The light in the flower, let's say you're doing flowers, can be a relationship if it's doing something special, but a flower and another flower can also be a relationship. And as soon as you have a relationship, it becomes a story. And so it helps anchor your purpose. So if your purpose is like mine, and like others who are, want to shift and bring beauty to the world, which is what we should be doing as artists. Historically, you go back through time, artists were the ones people look to for how to think, how to feel, what's going on, what should we be looking at. The artists were always the ones who had the permission. This is my interpretation of it. Always had the permission to take that impulse from the creative force, from the creator, from God, from higher vision, whatever, and actually make something happen with it, which of course is that is how we are designed to operate. It's just that whether through upbringing or social mores or what have you, we unlearn it, or it gets masked or whatever. But historically, civilizations would look to artists to see what. So it really is, and nobody else has the permission that we do to delve into this. I learned this in acting, actually. When I was an actor in my 20s, my very first agent, who would teach classes, they always called her the Dragon Lady. She was a tough customer, let me tell you. And she would say that as an actor, now I would say as an artist, so substitute artist for actor, all you have is you. All you have is this. Now, we think, what happens in especially landscape photography, what happens is people don't necessarily trust this as much as they could, so they rely on their gear because that feels safe. Unfortunately, the gear requires this to come alive and actually have something to say and not just record a blank scene, because a scene is a scene until you invest the goods, you, into it. So she would say, as an actor, all you have is you. So, as an actor, so as an artist, it's up to you to do whatever you got to do to bring that out. At the time, we were all young and troubled and, full of angst, not like we're not now. But anyway, speaking only for myself. So she would say, whether it's getting into therapy, whether it's listening to music, whether it's, expanding into other art forms to gain perspective, to expand yourself, to, bring in other influences so that you have that to draw from in your craft. She would call it a craft. Of course, we're dealing with art. So the same thing applies here. So those of you who are thinking purpose, I just like to take pictures. Okay, that's good. But if you could do anything with those photos, if they could have any effect, make any kind of difference, affect another person in some way, what would that be? How do you want them to feel? And you see, that's another sort of separating point that purpose helps you get to, is that it isn't, we do talk about make art that, makes you happy. That is important because that's kind of like the key that unlocks the rest. But what's the point of that if it's not in service of someone else? Because none of us are over here like in our own little orbit, not influencing people. We are all influencing people. So when you create your art and you're imagining what you love very specifically and you start working it in there, what starts to happen is you're working your scene, you're working your composition, you're figuring out your lighting and just exactly where the, that's it, feeling place is. What starts to happen is you start thinking how someone else would feel. And that connection, which is key connection, that connection is what starts to kind of make it come alive, because I think sometimes, I don't know, I have the suspicion that it requires the other, the exchange of energy with the other, to really come to life in the fullest way. The comment in the comments is, I find photography is to intrigue not only yourself but others. Exactly. And in the intrigue, see, intrigue is a good word because, and an interesting word that you chose, because I'm sort of focusing on landscape photographers because people consider me to be one. I just consider myself to be a photographer. But landscape photographers want to tell you things. Here it is. It's kind of nice to invite. It's really nice to have some mystery, to shoot something other than the standard, scene, to chunk down your scenes, to tell the other stories that are in the scene and stories that are down and up and, everywhere. So as you start, thinking about what your purpose is, then you start finding the depth of field that fulfills that and that covers that. You find the, so depth of field, those of you who aren't as familiar, meaning like you could focus on just my hand and everything else blurs behind, or you can focus on my hand and everything behind me is also in focus. So shallow depth of field is where nothing else is really in focus behind my hand, and then deep depth of field, whatever, full depth of field is where everything is. So they each tell a different story and they each serve a different purpose. So it gets a little miasmic sometimes, but that's why I kind of wanted to talk to y'all about it, because I wanted these Friday lives to offer some food for thought, especially from my photographer friends out there, and we're all looking for inspiration, and this helps me too, talking to y'all and hearing your comments and questions, and it just gets a dialogue going. It gets some juices going for all of us, and I think that's super important. So I'm kind of rolling what is purpose into why it matters. So if we go back for a second, let's see, there's a couple other examples about the why it matters. And more I keep coming back to the explanation that I never really gave this way, which is, again, the quantum. Okay, so I keep talking about this quantum field, this quantum light stream. Some of you know about this, some of it's news to some, but it's really interesting to think about while you're shooting and while you're considering how you get your point across. So what they've, studied, this isn't new, this is quantum physics. They've studied particle streams, beams hitting, whatever they hit, shooting through holes, hitting things. And they studied these things, and what they've discovered, I don't want to go into the whole, quantum physics of it. The discovery they made that applies to what we do, especially those of us who work with light as photographers, is the fact that the results of these tests, of these experiments that they did, they were very surprised to discover that they're completely affected by the observers. Isn't that trippy? I mean, especially those of you who have been with me on Artist Voice retreats, that's why after a couple days, all these crazy magical things started to happen. That's why. I just never wanted to say it that way. I didn't really have the right words that sounded scientific enough. It all sounded too woo-woo. But anyway, the observer changes or creates what the reality is. Yes, that is quantum physics. And, people can relate to it because, what is it? I'm going blank. The secret. The law of attraction? Okay, people talk about the law of attraction, and unfortunately, certain phrases get used so much they actually lose their meaning. So I like to kind of go back to what are we really talking about. So in these quantum physics tests and experiments, the person in the room, it came down to their thoughts, their emotions, and their preconceived ideas affected the results every time. So it was interesting because in one sense it was never a pure experiment, but the other part was it resulted in results that were very different than what they expected, but that I find super useful when we talk about things like purpose. Signature is another offshoot of purpose. You'd have a signature quality to your work. You really have to stand committed and fully formed and fully present and behind whatever your decisions are, for that signature to come through. And that's also your artistic voice as well. They're a little bit different, but in the same realm. And that's why it's a whole quantum thing. So it's a beautiful thing. But what it requires then of the artist is you got to be willing to go there. That can be scary, especially when you're not sure. You're not sure. Like, what are all the options of things to not be sure about when you're doing something like this? Am I doing it right? That's always a good one, because you never know. And I don't really think there is a right. There's only, like, you look at the result and then make adjustments based on whether that result is really in alignment with what it was you wanted to create, or whether what it created instead is in alignment with what you really felt. You get that little difference? I know this is really heady stuff, but you know what? We're artists. We are professionals. I have a friend, we say we're professionals, we're professionalistas, so we're artististas. I don't know if that's a word. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not, but I just made it one. So there you go. So this whole idea of what you observe, and how you observe it, and how you feel about it, right? So here we go. The quantum energy stream that is going through, your camera and you is affected by how you feel. This is why when I first started talking about this 6-7 years ago, more, maybe 10 years ago, and I thought, how do I explain this to people? Because it seems so woo, but it's so my experience, and it's so all of my students that I've ever taught, even when I was coaching voice, which I used to do. Once you got the basic technique down, it all came down to what I'm going to tell you now, which is that you have to commit to the whole thing, right? So you have to love it beyond anything. That's it. I'm sorry. I went two different directions just then. So what I was trying to say was, when I first started talking about this, I decided, what is the one thing, the simplest thing I could talk about and get behind? Preach on, sister. I've been diving into this stuff for a few years now. Preach on. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I say yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I just swap genders all over the place here. And that's not my fault. Oh my God, the conversations we could have. Anyway, so if you love something, I always said, what do you love? So my kind of like at this point, one and only ebook, Finding Your Artistic Voice, talks about, what do you love? Why? Because that is the simplest, cleanest, purest thread that you can draw on out of this whole tapestry of what I'm talking about, that will lead you to the right place, and the rest will kind of start to happen if you hang on to that thread and keep pulling it. So here you are, the quantum stream of creation. I call it the creative force. You got your camera, you got your subject, your purpose is at play, and maybe you're still trying to figure out, how your purpose all sort of, and you say, well, what do I love? And you train your lens on that. What is it about this that I love? It's the way the light is hitting that doggy's face. Oh, okay, let's frame that. Let's tell that story. Ooh, I love that. And you go by your feeling. You start to get the tingles, and your breath changes, and you kind of get, like the little breathy thing. And sometimes I cry. Sometimes I know it's right because I start bawling. Those kinds of things are all little guide stones that take you in there, that confirm that you're on the right track. And the reason people get off track is because they don't trust that. And the trick of not trusting is, the only way to learn how to trust is to keep showing up and doing it, even though you don't necessarily trust yet. It doesn't happen where you get the confirmation first and then you go, okay, now I know that's what I should do. Yeah, no, sorry. This is art we're talking about. You actually have to do it, take the risk, jump off the cliff, build your wings, float after you build your wings or crash, and then, get back up, climb up the cliff, and jump off again. So that's how it works. So the guideposts are, in thinking about purpose, is, well, I'm not sure, maybe you say, I don't know what my purpose is, but I know what I love. Or, I don't know, I'm not even sure about what I love, but I know what I don't like. So back into it then. If you don't absolutely know what you love, you just go, well, just start eliminating everything else, and the few things you got left are probably some things to explore. So I've had more people say, well, I don't really know, and I'm like, guess what, you're not going to know until you take the first 10 steps and jump in there. So I mean, recycling's out front. You probably don't hear it, or maybe they're out back. Oh, you can probably see them. See? They're very loud, but it's good because they take away our stuff, all of our garbage. So here's what happens. Now I'm going to take this whole concept and put it into more practical terms. Is any of this making sense to you guys? I know it does to some of you. Is this sort of making some kind of sense, giving you a little bit of some juice to think about some of the inner work? Like I say, when we went on our photo retreats that were anywhere from 5 to 9 days back when we used to get to travel, yes, the only way to create your own signature, this is true, is to step out of your comfort zone and think outside of your own box, right? So if you're not comfortable, chances are you're on the right track. I'm not comfortable a lot of the time. I'm not always comfortable even telling somebody about this stuff because I think they're going to think I'm a crackpot. I felt that way for a long time. But I've decided it's important enough, and enough people have confirmed. But, they didn't confirm until I was willing to step out and start talking about this stuff. That's how it happened. Somebody didn't just say, oh, I already love it. In fact, when I first started talking about these kinds of things in a public photography-oriented, big, conference setting, you got a room full of people watching you, and the one person that you see is the one in back who comes in and listens for about 10 minutes. shakes his head, and walks out. that's that's always that right in the middle of a presentation. That's always a good thing to see. Yeah, it really feels really good. So my point is, it's not always comfortable. You don't always feel like you're doing it right. Sometimes you feel like, when I first started talking about all this stuff in a professional setting, I thought this is either career suicide or the smartest thing I ever did. I'm still not really sure which, but I think mostly it's the smartest thing. I do know that I used to joke in the beginning that I don't really want to teach someone how to run their camera. I want to save their soul. I used to say that. I kind of feel that way still. I know that's not my job to save someone's soul, but it's really, I don't even want to talk to someone about their camera until they register and set here, because the minute you pick up the camera, if you're not firmly anchored in here and in this place, a whole different set of situations and circumstances take place. And when I hear someone saying, well, I'm always curious about settings too. Let's be clear. I like to know what somebody's settings are and so on and so forth, because it helps me kind of back into how they think. And I always want to know how someone thinks. But I don't know that everybody does. And a lot of times people start to grill me on my settings and my cameras and my lens and what's the this and that. And I'm like, wait a minute. What are you trying to do? What context are you asking me this? What do you actually want? What do you actually want to create? That always has to come first, because that will determine everything else after that. And it's so easy in photography, as a photographer, to get off in some other, camera envy situation. And I get it. I'm very fortunate because I'm a professional Fujifilm X photographer, and I get to shoot with the latest gear, right? But if I didn't, I would use whatever, and I would kill it. I wouldn't kill the camera. I mean, I would do a really good job, because on the one hand, the camera doesn't matter, on the one hand, in the sense that you should be able to pull it off, the vision, the accuracy, the composition, the defined space, the point of view, the story, all of those things that make a really good photo, you can do with a box camera. Flat out. You can certainly do it with your camera phone. But when you want to do, make better prints, or you want to create different results for different purposes, it may call for other gear. It may call for other styles or settings or what have you, but it will come out of this. It has to go in this circular fashion where, you have the impulse from in here, and then you put it out in the world through the camera, through the vision, and you take the picture and you process it and you look at it, and then you decide, did that come close to the feeling? You make certain adjustments, do it, rinse and repeat. So it goes inside, outside, completion, determination, and rinse and repeat. Too often in landscape photography, I see people skip all this part and just do a lot of this part. And I think their images are boring. And that's why, because I can't find them. I don't see them in those images. So we're really talking about finding ways and thinking about ways of embedding you. And at a certain point, yes, you've got to learn your technique, and, yes, there's some technical aspects, but honestly, even a rank beginner could learn to take a decent picture in about 15 minutes. Let's face it, with the right camera, right? It's not that hard to take a picture if you got a camera phone, but it takes a lifetime to create a piece of art that has the signature and the voice and the imprint of your heart and your soul and your spirit in it. And that's what we are as artists, is the ones who do that. That's our product. How about that? Think about that. So when your work isn't coming to that point, it could be something technical. You certainly want to look at everything, but it doesn't hurt to go back to, all right, where was I when I did that? In acting, when we would do a scene, so like when you're learning acting, you're in school and you take classes and you're doing scene study, you might do monologues or whatever. You're not doing a whole play, you take pieces of it out of context and put it up for the teacher and do it. And invariably, the biggest, most common, often heard correction is, you're not present, where were you, I don't believe you. Like, trying to get the student to show up and inhabit that character and that moment fully is really what all the training was about. And all the techniques in the world were all aimed at making that happen and that's what is meant by when you can get to the point where you can step into that space and let all the homework go. That's really being present, and that's really using the quantum energy field and it's the quantum leap, shall we say. And that's when it really does the in your work. So here's a couple of tips to help you just, think about these things. Now, when you're going to go out and tell a story, because a story, thinking in terms of telling a story with every image you take is really helpful, because it gives enough structure to this idea that it doesn't just kind of go woofty-woof off into the woo-woo land. So one of them is that you define a central character or a central subject, central idea. So in a landscape photo, that might be the sunset. Sure, say you're shooting a sunset, but what about the sunset? How is it framed? Like, who's enjoying the sunset besides you? Is that tree over there? Is it the way the light is hitting something? Is it this story of, nature dancing, or does something amazing? You got to put it in context and frame it. A lot of people will just shoot a big scene and they'll say, I'll crop it later, I'll figure it out. And I'm like, it won't be there. The thing you're looking for won't be there in the image. There won't be anything to crop. So like, I will go, this big beautiful scene, and I want it framed by this tree over here, and I want these rocks to be like little faces looking up at the sun, with the sun bouncing off of it in the foreground, and maybe there's something over here on this side to frame it and give it the ta-da that I want. And then I'll start chunking it down, because that's not the only story. That's not the only thing I love about this incredible moment. There might be just the part where the light hits the water, like say I'm at Lake Tahoe. And it might be just this frame that is like the DNA, like the core element of what I love so much is the light, the color, the sun, the way it bounces off the water. And maybe I make an intimate landscape out of that. And maybe over here there's a slice where the tree and the log and do a long exposure or whatever, and I walk away with a small little book of the whole experience of 5 or 10 images that are all different, that were all taken in the same moment, in the same scene, over, not the same moment, but over the same half hour, or whatever, however long you're standing there, and that tell different stories, different aspects to the purpose, to the signature, to the feeling, to the love that I have of this, and even the signature of nature herself that day. Am I making sense? I see people are in here. Sometimes I go a little off the deep end with this stuff. The other thing to consider is, in a good story, a story happens in a particular place, particular time, a particular moment. It happens. So a defined space. Again, I'm going back to landscape photographers, because they abuse this one all the time. They don't define their space enough. So even though, like, I shoot some really big, broad, they're just huge. Like, oh my God, and the impact of it is, all this beautiful, expanse. Well, that doesn't really come across in an image, the big expanse. What anchors it is that tree or that rock or the interaction. It's the relationship of the elements. So you've got to define the space, make some decisions, make some hard choices, and commit to them. So defining your space, defining your frame, not shooting everything is really important. And then point of view. So let's say you are photographing, I don't know, let's photograph macro for a minute. Let's say you're going to do a flower. Flowers are easy because we all see them. And you have the sun, and you choose late afternoon light because you like how it caresses the flower. I'm just talking about myself. That's what I like. I like late afternoon light. Here it's the best. But then, point of view. So from the point of view of, you could show, this is a point of view. This is a point of view. Shooting down is a point of view. Shooting up is a point of view. Those are physical points of view. So then you want to go that extra step further and say, all right, I'm going to shoot those things so that I have all those different perspectives, because that's a great exercise, and I do it myself. But what does that say? Like, what is it like? So often, if I get the right place, it's like that gentle caress of a face with just the right light, right? And it elicits this feeling of intimacy, of love, of gentleness, maybe of poignancy, these feelings. So when you start to have those feelings, you got to notice them while you're shooting, because whatever it is that you're got a fly, the fly is loving this conversation. Hi, fly. Be gone, fly. Whatever it is you're feeling, go into it and let that start to direct your lens and direct your focus and direct your depth of field and direct your subject, so that you walk away from that flower again with 5 or 10 completely different images, maybe backlit, top lit, depending on where the sun is. I always walk around. I like side light. I love backlighting. I love sunbursts. I love washing out parts of it. I like to come in and get like super detailed. I also like relationships between this flower and that one. Or if an insect or something comes in, I'm not shooting look at my picture of an insect. It's the relationship and the natural experience of it, and you want to make a moment out of it. So that happens in the lens. That happens in the composition. It doesn't happen later. I want to say I don't know why, except that I do. It's quantum. So if those decisions aren't there based on, oh, I love that. Oh, that's so cool. And I'm not kidding. Those feelings, oh my God, I love that. That imprints. That's the magic. It is magic in that sense, but it's quantum physics. So the other thing that helps with stories to get a point across is movement. So in photography, movement's always interesting to capture, because sometimes that means long exposure, so the movement is dragged. And that has a certain feeling to it. Sometimes it's a movement, like if your dog is leaping and you catch it in midair, it's this moment where you captured the movement, and it's really cool because your eye didn't even see the expression on his face or that look in his eye or whatever it is. So that's really special. You can capture movement by moving your camera. You can capture it by having your camera still with a filter so that everything moves slower in front of it. There's different, there's probably 5 or 6 different ways to capture movement. Just even sitting there and going out and doing an exercise where you go, how many ways can I capture movement? And what does it say? That's another way to get at what are the really great ways to express my purpose, to express my vision, and what it is I love. Give yourself exercises doing 5 different kinds of movement, 3 different points of view and perspectives, at least 3 different, same framing, 3 different depths of field. 3 to 5, this fly, this is pretty funny. Anyway, so the 3 of perspectives, points of view, aspect ratios. If your camera changes aspect ratios, like 3:2, 4:5. My GFXs do, what's that crazy one that I love so much, 24:65 or something like that. It makes you see different. You got to keep like eliciting ways of seeing, because you can feel all you want, but you got to get the connection so that it goes through. That's always my challenge. I mean, I think that's everybody's challenge, but I mean, that's always the thing. That's why I always have drills and exercises, because otherwise I just go out and I do the same thing all the time. Do you ever do that? Hit the heart if you ever do that. You ever just go out and just like you always do it the same way every time just because you do? Oh, you're just not admitting it. Anyways, so yeah, so those are some good tips there. You can always, rewatch this if this is hitting the spot and you want to make a few notes. Go out and just plan to. Another one is patterns. Look for patterns. Like nature. See, this is a whole other conversation I want to have about macro and patterns and the ratios and frequencies within those patterns and how nature is designed to harmonize with humans. There's a crazy ass, the whole thing, talking about quantum. Oh my God, it's so cool. Anyway, shooting patterns is really powerful, especially in nature, because just about all the ones in nature are intended to be harmonic with our frequencies in our bodies. Yeah, the comment is, it's like being stuck in an auto when you shoot the same way all the time. It is. It's like being stuck in your car, stuck in this little box, stuck on the same road. It's like you get there, but then you missed everything on the way. I have to take a sip. So, we covered light. I wanted to leave you with some exercises to play with. So, find some good light on the subject. Have a subject. Have something you love about that subject. And 3 different kinds of light. 3 different directions. At least 3 to 5. More if you can. But 3 to 5, that's ambitious. Perspectives, 3 different kinds. Even if it's shooting up, shooting straight, shooting down. If that's all you can come up with, hey, and that's new for you, that's great. Do that. Look at patterns. Look at shadows, light and shadow. So there's a really interesting thing about light and shadow. The line of shadow where shadow meets light. There's a place there where the light and the shadow blend. That's called a penumbra. I love that word, penumbra. But it's that place. And if you think of it a little bit metaphorically, it's a place where all things are possible. Like it's kind of this. It's not all one or all another. It's a little blend, and it's where things shift and change. So the penumbra of things, whether it's light and shadow or metaphorically speaking, it's sort of like this, but it's also like that. And in this place, it's all things, all possibilities. But anyway, when you play with contrast, you can explore penumbras and under the heading of light, positive light, negative light. So where it's all dark except for a little, or all light except for one little bit of definition. High key, low key. If you always shoot super bright, try shooting darker. Just make yourself uncomfortable and see what happens. See whether you would just want to run back to what you know, or whether you discover something new by doing something you're not entirely comfortable with. Hello from Copenhagen. That's another place. Okay, so we were talking earlier about having our, getting our group together, and then we're going to transport and beam to all these places. We're just, as a group, we'll just get our drinks, get our umbrella drinks, and we'll just go. So Copenhagen is now on the list. Okay. What's the other thing? And the last one I wanted to mention, 2 things. Juxtapositions. So when you have a juxtaposition of this over that, or in it, juxtapositions really tie into relationships. So a relationship between this and that, whatever this and that is always more interesting than just shooting that. Because shooting that is not real specific, which is my final point about be specific. Juxtapositions start to make it more specific. Shooting a defined space makes you be more specific. Shooting only what you love, only pressing the shutter when you go, I have to have that. Then press the shutter. Don't do the other 50 times in between just because you think something might be there. Because if you're thinking it might be there, it isn't there. This fly thinks it's there. This fly just freaking loves me today. And limit your gear. Use 1 or 2 lenses on a trip. If you're just going out to practice, take 1 lens and make yourself deal with it. I'm working on a project like that. I've got the 100S, the Fujifilm GFX 100S, and my project with them is the 120 macro. So I'm shooting it so many different ways. I'm not just shooting macro. I'm shooting landscape. I'm shooting, well, it's not really urban because I don't really, I go to Virginia City, which is a historic Western town, and shoot historic Western shots with my, the scenic things with it. I'm shooting, like I said, landscape, portraits, you name it, with the macro lens because it's such a bomber lens. It's really sharp. It's amazing, but everybody thinks of it as a macro and that's all it can do. It's not. It's just like it's just because you shoot landscape doesn't mean you can't also shoot portrait. You're not a one-stop shop. You're not a one-note Johnny, so to speak. A one-note samba. Anyways, so my point in sharing all those tips is the whole thing about purpose opens up this whole huge vista for making your work more meaningful, making it more you, taking more risks. Because it is risky. It feels risky. It feels vulnerable. You feel a little naked, if you know what I'm saying. You get out there and you really commit, because you have to commit. You have to be specific. It doesn't work to have a purpose and a point of view and a story, and you're going to go for a thing, and then you go, and then you step back. No. Life doesn't happen in the back seat. Life happens, tied on the roof of your car with your hair flying, and you're going, bring it on! You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing about purpose, is it enlivens everything you do, every decision you make, every image you create in a completely different way. It's personal, very personal. And your purpose doesn't have to be as big as heal the world. It doesn't have to be the standing pillar of light like mine. Your purpose might just be to make others feel good, right? Personally, purpose seems to be purpose and be on purpose when it involves having a connection with others and bringing something good to the party, which I think is another one of what personally I think is one of the best uses of art, is to enliven, not take away from the world, and bring some more light. Heck, we use light in our work. Why not be about light? You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of wrapping this up and winding it down. I've got, I don't want to keep you here all day, and I got some places to go, but I'm going to take another couple of minutes and answer any other questions that might be coming in. Comments. Does it make sense? I want to know those things. I also want to know, I put this out to my subscribers. So if you hop into my mailing list, go to KarenHuttonArt.com, sign up for my mailing list. You also get 20% off your first print. But so my mailing list is where I'm doing this. This is in public and everything, but I'm actually polling them a lot for how we want to focus these efforts, and they get all the first dibs on everything and get to be part of the conversation more. So if you want to hop over there and say hi and let me know how these work for you and what you'd like to talk about and what you'd like for me to cover. Unless I get smoked out, and we're waiting to see, I'm planning a road trip. It's already been delayed by almost a week on account of, how is it that my phone rings when I tell everything to shut off and yet it still rings? If somebody can, DM me that, I would love it. Anyways, so DM me your ideas, hop on my mailing list, be part of the conversation. Let's create some magic. I'm going to do my series on Fridays. These will be geared toward photography and creativity and creating things, and then we'll see how this goes and kind of what it evolves into. So the comment is, so this is where I've just been using, he's saying, my macro lens just for macro. That's how we think. I know, we get in our little way of thinking, see? So it's a macro lens, I only shoot macro. No, you need to start thinking outside of the box, just like you say, with this lens. You'll amaze yourself, and you'll kind of blow yourself away. Yeah, so some of you are hopping in a little late. That's okay. I've been blabbing for the last hour. An hour is enough of me, I tell you what. So I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you'd like to dive into more. When I'm on my road trip, anywhere that I have enough signal to do so, I will jump in live. Gotta have a sip. It's so dry here. Oh my God. So I plan to keep these going on the Fridays when I'm gone. I'll let you know more. But the times that I can't get on live, I'm still going to do videos and I'll still post them. And ideally I would take some questions or take some comments and thoughts and go into them and then post that. But I like the live because I like to see you guys and I love to hear your comments and see where you're all from and all that good stuff. So thank you for being here and for bringing your purpose, bringing your energy and your creativity, and let's keep this going. Let's keep this conversation going. There will be more. They'll be different. We will see what happens. All right? Have a great weekend, everyone, and happy shooting.